him sometime, let him know I did his tune here. This is from 1925. It's a tune that is usually done by an 11-piece jazz band. It's called Deep Henderson.
Is that I hadn't had enough beer to do that tune. So I don't know. Anyhow, thank you for joining me. This is an impromptu set. At the last minute I said to Charlotte, you know what, I don't get to play in the tent this year. And so she made me follow Tom Hook. That was pretty mean. Because he and his band are just great. But so this is just some...
If you move it off the leg of the piano, it moves along the leg.
That's what I'm wondering. It's sort of an odd little situation here. But you know what, while you're fixing that, I'm going to go turn the snare drum off. Because I think that the only thing worse than a drummer is a snare playing by itself. There we go. Perfect. Thank you, sir. All right, so some hot piano. One of the things that I think is important is when I'm doing a show of solo piano stuff, I always defer to the roots of this stuff. And you have to go back to ragtime for that. As a matter of fact, many of the songs your favorite bands have been playing all weekend are merely ragtime pieces played by band. All the original Dixieland Jazz Band stuff was simply rags. Fidgety Feet is a rag. I mean, they're all, you know, so this is the Maple Leaf Rag. Have you heard it yet this weekend? All right, you have? No. Well, when I'm done with it, tell me if you recognize it. And I'll tell you if I recognize it too. So here's the Maple Leaf Rag by Scott Joplin. 1899 is when this thing came out. And I think this one song is what turned American music on its ear
and gave us the tools to create a truly American sound. We were no longer trying to ape the Europeans, we were going to make our own music. And of course, that's what we're celebrating at this festival, truly American music. So here's the make-believe rag.
Somebody kept coming up and saying, now see, why does that happen? What did I do? Tell me. Just so I know. No, this is on. It's on.
It's very sensitive.
What do you know? A miracle worker, ladies and gentlemen.
Here's the make-believe rag.
I do have to tell you, I'm gonna play one more shorter version of it and slow it down for you, because that was how they were playing it in St. Louis. The first couple decades of the 20th century, in a place called the Rosebud Bar, which was run by a guy named Tom Turpin. He was 350 pounds, and he played piano as well as running the bar, but he couldn't actually sit at the piano because his stomach was so big that his hands would not reach the keys. So he devised a way of putting the upright piano on cinder blocks and standing at it. And then he was okay. But as soon as he sat down, the stomach went boom, and he couldn't reach it. So his was the place all the young Turks, all the hot piano players would gravitate towards. And in 1911, a guy walked into the place who people had heard about but they had not yet met. Jelly Roll Morton. And he had come up from New Orleans. And he heard them playing that, and he said, you know, those guys play fast, but there's no soul there. This is the way Maple Leaf Rag should be played. So he said, you know, those guys are just trying to play it too fast. Down in New Orleans, we keep things a little bit more relaxed. And so that's what he did. When he went up there, he sort of introduced them to the fact that it wasn't always about speed. And one of the tunes that I'm sure he played when he was there was written by Scott Joplin. He did quite a few Scott Joplin pieces, but with his own feel. This one is called Helot Bouquet. And Scott Joplin, in addition to being a great composer, and not a very good pianist, honestly. He was a much better composer. Hooked up with this guy from the Rosebud Bar, a young teenager. Well, he was in his late teens. Louis Chauvin was his name. And it's been chronicled that he was the hottest piano player in St. Louis at the time. The scariest guy. People didn't want to get anywhere near him because he was that good. So what's ironic is we only have some snippets of pieces that he wrote. He didn't write them down. Joplin actually helped out by writing a couple of sections of a rag. The one I'm going to play for you, Helot Bouquet. The first two sections are by Louis Chauvin, the last two are by Joplin. But I'm going to play it as if Jelly Roll Morton had heard it and decided to do it his own way. So here's Helot Bouquet, interpreted by me as if Jelly had taken it from Joplin and Chauvin in Tom Turpin's bar in 1911. Where obviously they have these kind of keyboards. So this was all Midwestern ragtime at its purest, ladies and gentlemen, and it probably would have stayed there, except that, of course, as the jobs dried up, the itinerant piano players spread out. They'd spread west to San Francisco. They spread east to New York. And as soon as they hit New York, the Tin Pan Alley guys said, oh, this is good stuff. I want ragtime on, you know, all the publishers said, we need some ragtime in our roster of tunes. So they'd say to the people, hey, you know, write a rag for me. And their staff writers would write a rag. The next day, write a waltz. They'd do that. That was it. Sort of a human jukebox with these Tin Pan Alleys. And of course, you know, Tin Pan Alley got its name because of all the jangling pianos being played in all of the studios. As you walked up and down the streets of New York, you'd hear them, sounding much like that, as a matter of fact. So here's a tune that came out in 1908, a big tune for a guy named George Botsford. And it's called The Black and White Rag for the keys. So here we go. The world's first electrodes version of the Black and White Rag. We've been doing a lot of different styles, but I wanted to focus on one more ragtime piece because of its huge history. It was written in 1914. The same year important blues tunes were written. St. Louis Blues was written that same year. 1914 seemed to be a very important year for our kind of music. And this guy who had grown up in West Texas and was in Kansas City at the time wrote a piece that would end up being a gigantic hit. And I think it proves something, ladies and gentlemen, about music. The simpler the music, the more it sticks with you. Whether you're a musician or not, if it's a simple tune, you walk away with it in your head. So he really took this to the extreme. He sat down at the piano, is my guess. I'm going back in time now, 100 years. And at the time, he sat down at the piano, he came up with this melody. He stopped for a moment and thought, now what shall I do? And he did it again. 3 notes. Exhausted, he retired to his breakfast nook. He had himself a cup of tea, a nice piece of toast. He came back and he continued with his composition. Writer's block hit. So after a couple of days, he returned to finish up his opus. Doesn't sound like much, does it? Until you put the left hand to it, and then you get this piece, which I think many of you will know.
12th Street Rag. Written by Eubie Blake, who died a pauper. Because like a lot of musicians, he had no business sense at all. The year before he died, Dixieland trombonist Pee Wee Hunt had a huge $1 million hit with it in 1948, and that was it. So poor Eubie left us, but he also left us this tune. So here's the 12th Street Rag. I'm pulling this stuff, there's no dance floor. One of the things that is so gratifying is that you're coming out here for hot piano on a cool evening. And all these guys who pioneered this music that we love so much never had the opportunity to play in swank places like the Olympia Dixieland Jazz Festival, with dedicated sound guys and gals taking good care of you, all the volunteers. You know, they played in sporting houses. That's right, sporting houses. Now, for you uninitiated, sporting houses, let's see, there are some genteel folks in the room. Let's just simply say Disneyland for adults. Houses of horizontal refreshment. And the piano player, his or her job, it was always a guy though, I have to say, back then they were called professors, and women weren't allowed in that place unless they were working. It was the 5th or 6th most important thing going on that evening, so they had to really, really belt it out. But a lot of the soulful stuff that came out of that time was really great. And Roll Morton did one in 1939 for the Library of Congress that he claimed had gone back to the turn of the century, because he was thinking of a piano player from New Orleans. Her name was Mamie Desdoom, and she had on each hand only 2 fingers, these 2, so like that as well. And she had a very distinct style, like I'm doing right here underneath the talk. It's about all she could do, a very simple piano style, but he said it was extremely haunting. Now, I did a little bit of research, by the way, and I discovered that she was also a kleptomaniac, but she could only steal bowling balls.
You won't find that in any of the jazz history books, but you should. Anyhow, he wrote this tune, or he probably just, remembering her playing, came up with it. It's called 219 Blues, or Mamie's Blues. Number 219 stole my babe away. Number 219 stole my babe away. Number 217, bring her back someday. Now I'm standing on the corner, my shoes all soaking wet, shoes all soaking wet. I said I'm standing on the corner, my feet's all soaking wet. I'm begging, begging each and every man I met, saying if you can't give $1, give me a lousy dime. If you can't give $1, give me one lousy dime. I gotta feed that hungry gal of mine. Now I only loved 3 women in my life. 3 women in my life. Said I only loved 3 women in my life. My mama, my sister, and the gal who ruined my life. I'm gonna lay my head on some lonesome railroad line. Gonna lay my head on some lonesome railroad line, and let the 219 come and pacify my mind. Cause number 219 stole my babe away. Number 219 stole my babe away. Number 217, bring her back someday. Bring her back someday. Bring her back someday. The 219 Blues. One of the interesting things about that is that by 1939, Morton had all these other blues lyrics in his head. And so they all ended up in this tune. A lot of those lyrics you can find in much earlier blues tunes.
than that one. But it's kind of fun to just get it down to, again, simplicity. All right, now this next song is anything but simple. But I want to illustrate to you that these professors, as they call themselves, were much more broad knowledge, had much more broad knowledge than many of the musicians today. And very few of them created music. It was simply the ear. They grabbed something from someone else who was playing it, and they started doing it themselves. And they had to play whatever the people in this joint, this sporting house, this brothel, whatever you want to call it, whatever they wanted, these guys had to play, or else someone else was sitting in that bench the next night at the piano. That old cliche, don't shoot the piano player, he's doing the best he can, had a lot of real truth to it. So, say some smart aleck comes in, he sees the place, there's dirt on the floor, there are ladies of the evening propping up the bar, there are drunks in the corner, he goes over and he says, hey piano player, play something classical. And the piano player says, well, okay, I will. Because a lot of them knew the classics, but they put their own stamp on it. So here's the oldest tune you're going to hear tonight from 1833. This is Frédéric Chopin's Nocturne in E flat, Opus 9, number 2, M-O-U-S-E. Thank you. Gotta get this silly little pedal here that keeps running away. Yeah. All right. I bet they never had to deal with this in the old days. Gunshots, knife fights, here we go.
You know, eventually I get used to things like these keyboards. One time I was hired to play in a theater, you know, a really nice, proper theater, and I got there, and in the back of the theater, I'm looking on the stage, there's a 9-foot Steinway grand on the stage, ladies and gentlemen. 9-foot Steinway. And I walked up, I was there plenty early so I could warm up a little bit. I opened the key cover, and inside this 9-foot Steinway grand was an electric keyboard. They had removed the guts from a $120,000 piano and put a $2,000 keyboard inside. Well, at that point, I was, through my tears, I said, I just can't do this. But, you know, what do? People that were coming to see the show, you don't want to disappoint them, so the show must go on. So what I did is I played the keyboard, and everybody out there thought it was a 9-foot Steinway grand. I know, terrible. Now that was okay. That would have been the end of the story, except that unaccustomed as I am to these things, this particular model had a button very close to the black notes in this area of the piano that said transpose. Yes, now if you're not a musician, what that means is you're changing from one key to another. If you press the transpose button, you know, for instance, this chord, then you hit that button, you play the same chord, but you hear this. Right, so that, for instance, Irving Berlin could only play in one key. But sometimes and it wasn't C, it was G flat, the one with the most black notes. Because a self-taught pianist always learns on the black notes because they're easier to play. So he had a piano, this is back before digital, of course, this is back in the first decade of the 20th century, where he would press a lever and the entire keyboard would move to the right or the left and go on other strings. So he was able to just play in whatever key he wanted, but he could accompany a singer, he could rehearse with a group of musicians, he could do whatever he wanted for that reason. So that worked for him, but it worked against me that night because my finger kept hitting that damn button. And so again, even if you're not knowledgeable about the ins and outs of the music, your ear is going to tell you that it was a catastrophe when this sort of thing happened. It was Charles Ives all night. It was I haven't been asked back and I don't give a damn. But you know, you come in here knowing what to expect, and the transpose button on this one is mercifully far away. So I think I'm in good shape. Now at this point in the show, and I've got plenty of other tunes I could do for you, but I'm always interested in hearing what you might want to hear that you haven't heard yet this weekend. And if I know it, I'll give it a shot. And sometimes even if I don't know it, I'll give it a shot. So, you know, don't be shy. Throw out some tunes and I'll choose what I can.
Not a tune, but can you tell me when the stride style started?
Sure. Sir, you're actually, that's a wonderful question, and I'll repeat it so you can all hear what he said. In my next set, which happens to be in this other building here, please join me, is a show on Fats Waller exclusively. And Fats Waller was one of the stride pianists. Stride piano playing was really in its infant stage more like advanced ragtime. Didn't yet have that jazz swing. It was James P. Johnson who was the crossover figure. He was playing late ragtime, which then morphed into an early swing style. So while the left hand is still doing that striding across the keys, bass, chord, all right? By the early 1920s, Harlem Stride, although it might not have yet been named that, was in full swing in New York City. So let me give you an example of that type of thing. Let me play you a simple pop tune you'd know, and I will do it the way, say, Joplin might have arranged it. So this is from 1920, it's called Margie. And you might have heard it if it were a Joplin piece, it might have been like this. That was not stride. That's how you would have heard it played by a Midwestern ragtime player, somebody who used a lot of octaves here and a lot of 2- and 3-note chords. Your stride guys would take that, they'd make the tempo faster, the left hand would go farther down to hit lower keys, the chords would be more involved, and the left hand was also involved in the syncopation, the screwing up with the rhythm that the right hand usually does in ragtime. So here's just a quick version of, you might have heard, say in 1923 in Harlem, somebody playing Margie. So in a nutshell, those were sort of the differences in the styles. Stride was more performance-oriented, and your classic ragtime was more composition-oriented. They were writing things they wanted to last through the centuries, and as we know from a lot of Scott Joplin's work, it certainly has. It was certainly helped by the film The Sting, too, in 1974. So all of our early indigenous American music began with ragtime. And if you want to learn more about it in a fictional way, my good friend Larry Karp, who lives in the Seattle area, wrote 3 mysteries with Scott Joplin as a main character. And not that he was putting on his Sherlock Holmes hat and walking around with a magnifying glass, but it's wonderful stuff. Check it out. You can talk to Larry afterwards in the second row. And great books, great books. So what else? That was a question, but is there any particular tune? Or yes, sir?
Benjamin Button's song?
Benjamin, now I've seen the film, but I can't remember any particular tune that was in it. Do you remember the title?
Oh,
you don't. Did anybody see that film with Brad Pitt? Huh?
Bethena.
Oh, is it Bethena?
Bethena, yeah.
Oh, great, great. I'll give you themes on a theme. I'll give you variations on a theme of Bethena, because I can't remember the whole thing. I wish I could. But here's the main theme that went throughout the film, and you're right, exactly. It was great. A Joplin waltz. So here we go. Again, I can't remember the whole thing, but you get the idea how beautiful it is. Off the top of my head. It is a very haunting piece, isn't it? The rumor is that Scott Joplin wrote it for a woman called Freddie. Her nickname was, maybe she was Frederica, I don't even know. Larry's more of a historian than I am. But he led a pretty sad life. Most of these guys did. The exception would be the ones who lived to be a long, old men, like Eubie Blake. Eubie Blake lived to be at least in his late 90s, and it's rumored he was actually 100 years old as well.
but he fudged his birth certificate so he could get a gig. So we're not quite sure how old he was. But Eubie Blake, you know, wrote amazing tunes. Why don't I give you a medley of some of his songs? You'll know a few of them, and you won't know others. So I'll tell you what you're about to hear. We're going to start with his biggest hit. One of two, anyway. This was called I'm Just Wild About Harry. And he wrote it as a waltz, that feel that we were doing just now. And he wrote it for a show called Shuffle Along. And the singer in that show was one of those red hot mamas. She liked to sing the hot stuff. So she came over and she said, Eubie, I ain't singing no waltz. That's not what I do. I sing hot stuff. So you write me a new song. So he went home that night, did absolutely nothing except what he would normally do. Came back the next day and played the exact same piece in foxtrot feel instead of in waltz feel. And she didn't recognize it was the same tune. This is what you can do to singers sometimes. A few other songs that he did. Of course, Memories of You, one of his big hits. His biggest hit, and a big hit for Benny Goodman. Love Will Find a Way from Shuffle Along as well, a gorgeous tune. And then I'll finish up with the one he wrote when he was purportedly 16 years old. Same year as the Maple Leaf Rag, by the way. It's called the Charleston Rag. And it's going to be very interesting to play this in the ever-weakening light, but I think I can manage. So here we go. This is a medley of Eubie Blake hits. And you know what a medley is. It's one song after another, but just not necessarily in that order. All right, here we go. I'll play you one chorus as the waltz so you can hear what Eubie Blake intended this tune to be, and then we'll mess with it.
Thank you so much. Wow. I'm going to do one more tune for you, and then I'll be taking a 15-minute break and starting in the Student Union, where there's actually an acoustic piano, and doing all Fats Waller all the time. So stories and songs about Fats and by him as well. If you're interested in more of this hot piano stuff, last year I had a CD called Windows. No, sorry, Doorways. That was the first one. And the sequel is out this year. It's only been out for a few months. It's never been here in Washington before. It's called Windows. Many of the songs I did tonight are on those CDs, including the Eubie Blake medley I just did. I guess after Doors and Windows, I'm going to do Attics next. You know, or basements or something. But it's all some of the history as well of the whole sporting house scene. The birth of our music, actually. And done with that same, excitement. So if you're interested, I'll be happy to sign them, but they're worth 40% less on the black market once I have, so purchase them first, please. Uncharacteristically, because I'm going to be starting again right over in that other room, here's, to finish up, is a vaudeville tune called I Left My Sugar Standing in the Rain, and My Sugar Melted Away. I know, very sad, thank you. Somewhere the sun is shining, but here it only rains. I'm sad from dusk till dawn, 'cause I wonder where my sweetie's gone. I used to call her sugar, 'cause she was sweet to me. The reason that I'm all alone is very plain to see. Oh, I left my sugar standing in the rain, and my sugar melted away. Sweeter than the sugar from the sugar cane, I never meant to treat her that way. I guess my sugar thought I was the low-down kind. Well, who'd have ever thought that she was so refined? Oh, I left my sugar standing in the rain, and my sugar melted away. So I hope some of you might come over and check it out, the next set. But if you don't, thanks for being here tonight. If you are interested, we've got CDs, we have neckties, stained glass windows, and samplers. My sponsors for this weekend, and I hope they don't regret it yet, Doris and Jim Van Olst from Corvallis, Oregon. Alright, now when you did an old vaudeville tune back in those days, you got your money's worth. Today, you turn on the radio, there's not even any words. It's just the whole time. But here you got a verse, you got a chorus, you got a pattern chorus. And here's the one for tonight. You don't miss your umbrella until it rains. You don't miss the doctor till you're having pains. You don't miss your rubbers until it starts to storm. I didn't miss my babe until the day she's gone. You don't miss your money
till the market drops. You don't miss the butcher till you're out of chops. I didn't miss my babe until the other day. I bought her shoes, she put them on and walked away. My baby, so let me stay. Who would have ever thought that she'd evaporate? Oh, I left my sugar standing in the rain, and my sugar melted away. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jeff Barnhart. I hope you enjoyed Hot Piano for a cool evening. We'll see you later on. Have a great weekend.